Hello everyone, my name is Skylar, and if you haven't picked up by now, horses in the Western world are my entire life. And with that being said, the movie I have chosen is called The Longest Ride. This movie came out in 2015, and I actually ended up seeing it in theaters with my family. This movie is about former bull riding champion Luke and a college student, Sophia, falling in love. But with conflicting paths and ideals threaten to tear them apart. Luke hopes to make a comeback in the rodeo circuit, and Sophia is about to embark on her dream job in New York in the art world. As the couples ponder their romantic future, they find inspiration in Ira, an elderly man whose decades-long romance with his beloved wife withstood the test of time. Our characters, Luke and Sophia, meet at a local rodeo that's going on in Sophia's college town. They later on that day meet up at an after party, which is where it all really starts. As we know, Luke and Sophia have very different backgrounds. She's all about school, studying all the time, and Luke is eye on the ball, competing in his rodeo circuit. They both have polar opposite dreams. And if Sophia had not gone to that local rodeo, she would have never came across Luke. Social media and interpersonal communications. This is a network that broadcasts everything, any communication channel that you can think of. Social media puts out a certain image of people, and they will do or say whatever they want to make up the person that they want the world to see. Since Luke is big time in the rodeo world, he is broadcasted everywhere, which means live TV and YouTube. When they had first met, Sophia had no idea that he was big time. To her, he was just any old cowboy. She ended up looking him up one day and found out that he had a really bad accident and almost ended up dying. He had such a bad concussion that he suffered from major brain trauma and was in the hospital for weeks. This ended up causing a fight. Sophia is very determined to get Luke to quit rodeoing because she is very concerned for his health. And Luke replies with, he is not quitting because this is all he has ever known and his family depends on it. So as I've said before, they come from completely different backgrounds, but in some ways they're very much alike. Luke has always worked very hard to provide for his family and keep the family ranch going since his dad has passed away, and Sophia has done anything and everything to study and work hard towards this internship in New York. This is where socioeconomic status comes into play. Their social classes are very different. Luke is in the ranching world and Sophia is all about books, and they come from complete opposite backgrounds, but are both very hard workers in their own way. On their first date, they take the time to learn about each other, and that's where they come to learn the differences. But in some ways, they actually gain from this. They learn about their career paths and the goals that they have set for themselves. This is something that drew them together from the start. Luke and Sophia feel very strong about their each career paths. It has taken years for them to come to where they are today, which means sacrifices, sweat, and tears to accomplish everything they have. Although they have shared most things on their date and on other occasions they have hung out, they have chosen to also hide some things from each other. And that is where the public and private selves come into play. So this is where you either choose you want to be your perceived self or your presenting self, two of which are the complete opposite of one another. Perceived self is the person that you want to be when you're being most honest and presenting how you want to be seen to the public. In this case, Luke and Sophia choose not to share some of the most important things about them, which is that Sophia wants to be in New York to pursue her art career, and that Luke will never give up the rodeo life because that is the only thing he's ever known. Since this is a romantic movie, there is a lot of emotions in this movie. This means there are psychological influences such as mood. In any relationship, there's always going to be a mood. Depending on who sets the mood is what might happen. So on the car ride home from one of Luke's accidents that he has again, they start to argue because Sophia is very concerned for Luke's well-being, and Luke decides that he will not quit his rodeoing because that is the only thing he wants to do. This ends up being their breakup. Sophia is very upset with him, and she ends up storming off and driving away. After the breakup, Sophia goes to an old friend, Ira, talks to him, asks him for some advice. She is expressing her feelings, thoughts, and emotions to Ira, and she mentions, "I've never felt this way before about anybody." This is showing her a language of responsibility. She uses the word I. She is claiming her statement and expressing her feelings and emotions through her words. She is trying to tell Ira that he is the one and that he makes it all worth it, but how does she get him back, and what kinds of things does she have to sacrifice? Of course, there has to be that special moment in a romantic movie that is just it, when you truly see that the two characters are in love, and this has to do with nonverbal communication. This moment happens when Luke is trying to teach Sophia how to ride a bull on a dummy bull. He places his hand over hers and looks up at her as she looks down at him, and at this moment, you see their eyes automatically lock, and that is it. This is where you can truly see they're in love. With Luke and Sophia being in a relationship, listening is one of the most important things. Let's go back to the breakup for a second. Sophia and Luke are both upset, expressing how they both feel, but at the end of it, they were both done. Sophia then goes back to her friend Ira and opens out about how she feels. Ira has lived a very similar love story and wants to help Sophia. Sophia is explaining to him all her emotions and all the things that have happened and the way that Luke has been treating her. Ira then replies with, "I wish I could tell you it's easy, but love requires sacrifice." This ties into mindful listening. Ira is giving back his meaningful, thoughtful information to Sophia because he truly cares for her well-being and wants her to be happy. Love is such an amazing thing, and one of the coolest parts about it is combining two lives and worlds and making it together as one. Let's talk about facilities. These are shown heavily in this movie by both of our main characters. We know Luke comes from a ranch life and rodeo world, where Sophia is more clean-cut and into the art world. Luke shows his love for Sophia by showing up to one of her big art shows, which could potentially come out to be her huge internship in New York, where Sophia goes to every single one of Luke's rodeos and is always in the audience, sitting on the edge of her seat watching him compete. Appearance. This is one of the first things that strikes someone's attention. It's like your first impression the first time you see one another. So in this case, that is when Sophia ends up going to the local rodeo, which she ends up being forced to by her friends. So if she never would have went, they never would have met. Appearance is the first thing that sets the relationship. So if it's a good thing, then you most likely will have a positive relationship. And if it's not a good thing, then most likely there will be no relationship that comes of it. In any relationship, there has to be commitment. Without that, there will be no relationship, nor will the couple be able to stay together. Luke and Sophia get a little sticky with that. Sophia is definitely more committed than Luke is. She falls heavily in love with him from the start, where Luke is in love, but he's not as committed and doesn't sacrifice like Sophia does. That is what causes a problem between the two. Sophia's at every single rodeo, always supporting him, and Luke only shows up to one of her art shows. This is a huge thing for Sophia because art is so important to her and she wants to build a life around it. It's everything she has ever worked for. The commitment has to be equal on both sides in order to please one another, or else the relationship will be unhappy. If a relationship is really meant to be, then it'll be. Luke and Sophia have not had the perfect relationship, but they're both not innocent. Their love is one of the strongest things ever. Ira, the old man who Sophia and Luke were friends with, ends up passing away. Luke is at his last ride and has won his championship that he has worked so hard for. Meanwhile, Sophia is at school in the middle of taking her test when they both have gotten the call that Ira has passed away. They are told by the attorney that there will be an auction held for all of Ira's paintings and that he would both appreciate if they had come. They both end up seeing each other, and this is the first time that they have seen each other since the breakup. Luke ends up bidding and buying one of the paintings called Ruth, which is actually Ira's wife's painting. In the clause, it has said that anybody who has purchased the painting Ruth will end up having the whole collection. This ends up being worth $200 million. This is where collaboration comes in. It's a win-win situation. Luke and Sophia end up meeting in the back when Luke is signing the papers for the paintings, and Luke seals it with a kiss. He has told Sophia that he has given up bull riding and that he would like to spend the rest of his life with her because she is truly the one meant for him. Love is not easy, nor does it come overnight, but if the person is really worth it, then all the pieces will fit together. Luke and Sophia finally had confirming communication, which is what their whole relationship has been waiting for. This is really important to them because Luke has finally come to his senses and realized that Sophia is the one for her. It's not really his or her way, it's their way. They end up opening a museum together and spending the rest of their life together based off of Ira's paintings and all the advice that he had given. Overall, in any relationship, you have to deal with communication, and it's one of the most important things. Love is also one of the second hardest things, so you really have to master love and communication at the same time. Luke and Sophia showed great examples of the course concepts, and when looking for them, it really opened up my eyes to see how they connected together. This movie will always be one of my favorites, but now ever more than before. Thanks for listening.